Hi, welcome to Beyond Politics. I'm Catherine Clark. Alberta Conservative MP Mike Lake grew up wanting to be an NHL player, but when that dream didn't come through, he did the next best thing, and he worked for the Edmonton Oilers Hockey Club for 11 years. Politics came up kind of out of the blue, and he joins me now to talk all about his decision to run, his family, including a son with autism, and the rest of his life beyond politics. Mike Lake, welcome to Beyond Politics. It's really great to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, how did you get into this whole political thing? Because you had a very, I have to assume, interesting and I think a lot of men would call enviable career with the Edmonton Oilers Hockey Club, and then you end up in politics. How did that happen?
Well, I did. I spent 11 years working in the offices of the Oilers and lived in Alberta. I've always been pretty conservative in my views, but had never really been overly involved in politics, and lived in a riding that was represented by a Liberal for 13 years, one of the two in Alberta that was represented by a Liberal, and we lost the 2004 election by 134 votes. And one night, myself and 5 friends were sitting around the fire pit in the backyard, just a nice June night a couple of weeks after the election, sort of lamenting the fact that we'd lost that seat, and the conversation kind of took to exploring why that might have been and how someone gets involved in the process. And none of us really knew at that time exactly how the process worked, the nomination process and those things, and through the course of that conversation I got interested in pursuing at least how it happened, and as I went through the process and learned a little bit more about it, we got involved actually and fought one of the most hotly contested nominations in Canada for the Conservative Party that year, and wound up coming through on the 5th ballot and winning in the 2006 election.
That would have made it a long night.
Yeah, it was a long night. I think it was about 1:30 in the morning when we got the news. And I should say, in terms of the reason why I got involved in politics, having been conservative, I really kind of came to a place where we had a lot of conversations about politics, and
we being family, friends,
people at work, whatever the case may be. And I knew where I stood in terms of what my politics were and what party I affiliated with, in terms of issues like taxation and criminal justice issues, accountability, and those things. And in going through that process of these conversations, I guess over time you kind of realize that eventually you can't just talk about it. For some of us, it's important to get involved. For some people that means running. For others it might mean getting involved in volunteering on a campaign or something like that. But just decided that it was time to take that next step and get involved.
Were you sorry to leave your job behind?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had great relationships. The Oilers organization is a fantastic organization, as a lot of people across the country recognize. There's a tremendous history there, and the people that I worked with, the culture of the organization was terrific. Very, very difficult to leave that. But that said, this is a new world that's exciting, and it's still exciting after 4 years. Very, very interesting new challenges and the opportunity to meet new people and help people, and it's a lot of fun, very rewarding.
When you were a little kid, did you have any political inclinations at all? Did you grow up in a political household? Did you have any exposure to it?
I would say no. I would say, growing up, it wasn't just like most Canadian families. I mean, you talked about it from time to time, but certainly no involvement in party politics or anything like that. I had a great uncle who was a cabinet minister in the social credit government in Alberta, so that was as close as it came. His name was Fred Colborne.
Oh, great.
And was a MLA for many years in Alberta. But, we had interesting conversations from time to time. But other than that, not really a lot of involvement politically. I should mention, though, that something kind of interesting is that I graduated in a small town called Devon, in a school, John Maland High School. Our grad class had 63 people in it, and one of the people in my grad class was Rona Ambrose, so the two of us graduated together.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Wow, that is a small world.
Yeah.
Must have been quite the school.
Yeah, interesting now, looking back, for sure.
Yeah. So did you have a sense as a little kid what you wanted to be when you grew up? Did you have big dreams?
No question. For me, it was all about hockey.
It was.
For me, it was my dream growing up, like a lot of Canadian boys, was to play hockey in the NHL, and you know, I never got to that level. As hard as I tried, I still play even now. My wife jokes that it's almost time to give up the dream, but I always dreamt that I would play in the NHL one day, and when that didn't happen, I was fortunate enough to get a business degree at the University of Alberta and wind up coming out and working for the Edmonton Oilers.
So what position did you play? Or do you play?
Center. Yeah.
Okay.
I play forward.
And do you play in Ottawa or just at home? Where do you play?
Actually, I play both places. I have two sets of equipment.
Okay. Thank God, because Air Canada wouldn't think highly of you if you tried to cart that back and forth every week.
Well, it makes it tough. I like to travel with not having to check luggage, so it makes it tough with hockey equipment. They don't let you take it on the plane. So I have a set here. I play once in a while here. We'll do the odd charity game. In fact, we did one a couple of nights ago in Alexandria for the benefit of a hospital there in a sports hall of fame. And it was a lot of fun. Pierre Lemieux hosted us out there and
nice.
got a great reception. We always get a great reception.
So this is a band of MPs?
Yeah,
just nonpartisan?
No, this is a group of conservative MPs that from time to time will go out and play a hockey game like that. And then back home, I actually play in a league, so I play every weekend back home, which is perfect for my schedule. I have one game every weekend. And
when? Because if it's perfect for your schedule, it might not be so perfect for the family that hasn't seen you all week.
You know what?
It late?
It's late on a weekend night, so it's one of the 2 weekend nights. My kids are in bed when I get the chance to play, so it actually does work within the schedule a little bit, and it's sort of. You know, it's very important when we live in a world where we don't get a lot of exercise, obviously, other than maybe running back and forth from meetings, but we spend a lot of time sitting and sitting through meetings and things like that, and you want your mind to be engaged, and physical activity is important for that. Yeah. So it's kind of one of those few sort of non-negotiables that I have, is that I make sure that I set aside the time, you know, of course, after the priority of family, to get some exercise and try and take care of myself as best I can.
Did you grow up with a sense that you wanted to make a difference in the world? Did you have? I mean, did you volunteer as a little kid, or did you do things of that nature, or did this whole interest in politics really just come out of that one fireside discussion one night?
Oh no, there's a whole lot of things I think that lead into a mindset where you do want to take a step like that. Yeah. You know, growing up, I certainly saw my father engage in put people as a priority ahead of maybe financial pursuits and things like that. We never had a whole lot of money growing up, but for both my mom and dad, people were the priority. In fact, my parents, when I was 16 years old, took in the first of what would be 10 foster kids that came through our house. And just tremendous sacrifice on their parts. And so I got a chance to witness that firsthand. I'm not sure I would say that I embraced it at 16 years old. It's a little bit.
And is that when it started?
Yeah,
when you were 16?
I was 16 was when that happened the first time. But it's these what were then kids, now adults, are part of the family. Now, and so that's a big part of it. Certainly, I have a 14-year-old son now with autism, and there's a component there, although I wouldn't say that I got involved because of the issue of autism. It's certainly been something that has been a great opportunity for me to embrace awareness and talk to other government people of different levels of government and to talk to families about that issue. So I think you just have to like people and care about people, and I think that's sort of what drives us.
And when you're 16, even if you like people and care about people, if you have people being brought into your home that you don't know and who likely are coming from troubled backgrounds, that can be really disconcerting for a kid.
Oh, certainly.
What was it like for you? I mean, when that first child came to your home, what was that like for you?
At the very start, it was difficult, of course, as a 16-year-old. I grew up in a family of 4. My brother's 14 months younger than I am, and you kind of have traditions built around that family of 4, your games nights and things like that, your sports activities and other things. You know, it didn't take very long, though, before you start to warm up to it. Eventually, I think the first 4 kids came within a fairly short order, within a year or so.
And how long did they stay?
The idea would be that they would stay till they're ready to move out.
Wow.
So a significant thing. For them, it was important, and you know, to have the opportunity to be a part of a family like that. For us, the first 4 were boys that were in their teens. We would go out and have, actually still from time to time do go out and have ball hockey games out in the front of our house in Devon, still where I grew up at Christmas time and things like that. So it didn't take long to warm up to it. Once we kind of got used to the idea, I think it was probably more intimidating before the first boy moved in than afterwards.
Tell me how your parents reacted to it. I mean, they obviously made the decision to do it.
Yeah.
But how did they explain it to you guys?
I think that they started by explaining the importance of reaching out to people. And they had always exhibited that. So this wasn't something new, the notion that we would reach out to somebody as a family that needed help. This was something that my parents had always done. My dad had done work as a social worker prior to that. But this, of course, was a big step, having someone move into the house, and it wasn't a very big house that we grew up in Devon. So when we had 5 or 6 boys living under the same roof with one bathroom and a smaller house, it was a pretty big deal. Of course, the time frame wasn't that long before my brother and I had moved out to go on to university or college at that point, and many of the 10 over time came in after the fact, and not at the same time. It was obviously staggered over several years. So. Do
you keep in touch with any of them?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, one of the most touching things I think in my life was when my dad passed away in 2003, and he passed away rather suddenly. And at that point, we kept in touch with some, and some we hadn't seen for quite some time. But of course, at that time, virtually all of them came together, and just some of the amazing things that they said that maybe we weren't quite aware of in terms of their feelings towards my dad and their experience there was really, it was obviously a pretty emotional time anyway, but I think made that much more special because of it.
Wow, that really is an incredible way to grow up.
Yeah.
Tell me how you met your wife.
How did I meet my wife? Wow. I was working in a restaurant while I was going to university, a restaurant called Maxwell Taylor's. Actually, it was prior to going to university. I took 3 years off between high school and university, and it was in the sort of month-long lead up in August before I was about to go back after 3 years off.
And why did you take the 3 years off? Did you just want to
money? I just needed to make some money to pay for my university. Like I said, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, so it was an opportunity to make some money, and I continued to work while I was in school. But I'd been serving her for about a year, and interestingly, unknown to both of us, we both had kind of noticed each other and never really kind of had a conversation about it in any way. And then finally one night I got off. I was working out on the patio. She was sitting in the restaurant, and I got off work a little bit early and was coming by the table, recognized her, and stopped to say hi. And again, I hadn't really known that this was going on, but she and her friend had come in kind of hoping to connect with me, and she was going to ask me to come to a wedding with her as no pressure there. Come to a wedding as your first date, but she was going to ask me if they saw me to come to this wedding. Yeah. And so her friend excused herself and left the table and told me to sit down. And
she had her wing woman.
Exactly,
nice.
Exactly. So it was a bit of a conspiracy, but it's been all good since then. That was in 1990, so it's been 19 years now.
Wow.
Or 20 years now. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How long till you got married?
3 years. 3 years. So we're coming up on our 17th anniversary in June.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you got snared.
It's a good thing, though, a good snare.
Yeah. And you do have 2 children.
We do, yeah.
Yeah, and how old are they now?
Jaden is my son. He's 14 years old, and Jenae is 10.
And
daughter.
you mentioned that Jaden has autism.
Yeah.
At what stage did you realize that there might be something different about Jaden?
He was probably around 1.5 was when I would say we started to notice that there might be something different. He was progressing pretty normally up to that point. Actually, some of the first things that we noticed were real things that you would look at as skills. He would take those little foam letters that all kids play with, the ones that go in the frame, and we'd throw the frame away and he'd put them in perfect order from A through Z, at 1.5.
Wow.
And one time a friend of ours just was very intrigued by this and decided just on a whim to put the Z down and see what he did, and he proceeded as fast as anybody else would put them in forward order. He put them in backwards order without ever having done it before. So we at first kind of noticed, man, he has this skill in terms of his visual, the way he sees things visually. But within the next 6 months, we started noticing there were some significant other issues socially and in terms of his attention span, and probably the most important, the fact that he wasn't speaking, and still at this point doesn't speak with his mouth at 14 years old.
At all?
At all.
How does he communicate?
He can write.
Mm-hmm.
He can communicate using a computer. He's very good with a computer. He has a little voice output thing. We're actually experimenting right now, talking about technology with an iPod Touch, and there's an app for the iPod that is a speech device. It's about $180. I think his first speech device was $10,000.
Whoa!
So so very, very significant. So we're working with that right now, and that's how he communicates. But going back to when he first, at the time he was about 2.5, the way that he would communicate at that point was he would point to things, but he would grab us and talk about social interaction being kind of a key marker, the way kids with autism socially interact versus the way normal developing kids do. He would come and grab us if he wanted something, drag us to the place where it was, push our hand up to the shelf where the thing that he was, and then sort of have us bring it down and kind of use us as tools, machines to get what it was that he wanted.
Give me a bit of a sense of autism in general, because we hear so much about it. Yeah. But a lot of people, I would imagine, a lot of people don't know necessarily what it is. And frankly, I think that the majority of people who don't have an autistic person in their family know about autism because they might have watched Rain Man.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. And to be sure, Rain Man is actually a pretty good representation of what one person, adult with autism, might be like. I would say that people with autism are unique. Each person with autism is very unique. There's certainly some similarities in terms of some behaviors, mannerisms that people might kind of associate with autism, like rocking back and forth or repetitive language for those that actually are able to vocalize, things like that. Probably the best thing I can do is describe what Jaden's like at 14 years old. He's not able to talk, to communicate, and he has a difficult time communicating with his computer and with writing when it comes to anything abstract. He's fantastic with concrete things. So if he wants a cookie, he can write cookie or put cookie in on his machine. But if he gets hurt or if he's sad for any reason, has a very hard time articulating what it is that's making him sad, or how it was that he got hurt, or even sometimes where it is that he's hurting. And that's difficult for parents, and certainly a challenge that parents of all children with autism face. Very, very difficult. On the flip side, on the good side, I guess, in a sense, is Jaden is very, very loving. He's very, very warm. He never would intentionally be mean to anybody or hurt anybody on purpose. Sometimes he gets aggressive, and there's a sort of sensory aspect to autism that causes him from time to time to pinch or to really grasp onto something hard. I recently broke my finger, and this was just actually on the weekend. The day after I broke it, he came up to me and was trying to get my attention for something and grabbed right onto my finger.
Yeah.
And between Debbie and I, we had a hard time getting him to let go because he just didn't understand that was what we were trying to ask him to do. So sometimes the sensory thing can be a little bit challenging when you're in schools and things like that. But again, he would never intentionally hurt anybody, and he wouldn't know when kids, other than being physically mean, he wouldn't know when kids are being mean to him. He's kind of oblivious to,
which is kind of a blessing.
That kind of thing. And it is a real blessing. And fortunately, we're at a school where the kids are very good to him, and there's lots of kids there to protect him and to help him through things. And it's good for him, but it's also good for them to have that integration and see how Jaden is, and to recognize that there are, as you said, you talk about blessing. Recognize that there's blessings that go along with people that are different in different ways.
How does he interact with his sister?
Oh, he's fantastic with her, and she's fantastic with him. They actually, in some ways, from time to time, will have a typical sister-brother relationship. If he wants something, he'll grab it, and she won't like it. Something like that. But she has a tremendous understanding of him. When she was 5 years old, she was asked, what's it like to have a brother with autism? She was asked by a magazine, and in her own words, she said that, Jaden's my older brother, but in some ways he's like a younger brother. And that's still the way it is right now.
Yeah. And a wise thing for a 5-year-old to say.
Yeah, for sure.
At the time.
Yeah.
Did his autism ever, would it ever have deterred you from entering politics?
That was probably I wouldn't say his autism. I think the family situation was probably the biggest consideration as we went in. We didn't take the decision lightly. We didn't take the decision lightly. And at the time, of course, my kids were 5 and 9, so it was a little bit different time frame than it is now. You know, what we've chosen to do is try to, you know, as we considered it and what it would look like, try to include them in what we're doing. So try to bring them out here when they can. Now with Jenae in grade 5, it's a little bit more difficult. So they'll come out a couple of weeks a year, maybe 3 weeks during the course of the year, whereas before it might have been 5, maybe 6. What we've chosen to call it, instead of talking about how difficult it is, and certainly it's difficult for any family that undertakes this, particularly I think for those of us that have to travel as far as we have to travel. It's a difficult challenge, but we chose not to focus on that. And we kind of refer to it within the family as a family adventure that we're on. And there's so many great things about that adventure. And you know, one of them is the fact that Jaden has had the opportunity to meet you know, hundreds, you know, more, you know, most of the MPs probably in the House of Commons have had a high five from Jaden at some point and had him hand them an autism awareness pin. We've had the opportunity to have many discussions around that. But for my daughter, she's learned more about politics than most 10-year-olds. And you can relate to that, I'm sure. You know, the notion of being involved. She said to me, the last election campaign, she asked me just out of the blue one day, she was in the back seat, 9 years old at the time, and said, "Daddy, has a leader of the NDP ever been Prime Minister before?" You know, just out of the blue. I mean, I don't know how many 9-year-olds would ask a question like that.
And is she genuinely interested in what you're doing?
She is. She loves to come here. She loves the Library of Parliament. I think it's her favorite thing about the...
It's pretty impressive.
It is. Yeah. And so she loves that. She loves to read. But when we go in the House of Commons, we've gone in the chamber before, of course, when it's closed, and she goes through and counts all the seats. So she's interested in seeing how many MPs are there, and she knows that it's 308. She knows what the Speaker does, and
that's
very interested.
That's great.
I asked her before the last election. I had a conversation with her, and I said, "Jenae, you know that if Daddy doesn't win the election, you know that I won't be an MP anymore." And she kind of thought about it for a second or two, and kind of looked at me and goes, "But Daddy, I want you to be an MP." And I asked her why, and she said, "Well, you know, I like to watch you on TV from time to time, and I like to go to Ottawa and see the Library of Parliament, and I like it when you visit my class." You know, so there's certain things that a 9-year-old can appreciate about that. And
that's really terrific. Yeah. And you know, the great thing about the resiliency of 9-year-olds is that even had you not maintained your position as MP, she would have been perfectly happy with whatever you chose to do next.
She would have been happy to have me home.
She would have been happy to have you home.
Yeah.
So what is it like for you to make that commute away from your family every week?
That's the hardest part about it, certainly. Being away from the family is difficult. I leave usually on Monday morning, first thing in the morning, if not Sunday night, and then I now, as in my role as a parliamentary secretary for industry, I'm here on Fridays usually for question periods, so I don't get home till Friday evening by the time I get home.
Yeah.
The leaving the family is certainly the hardest thing. The actual commute, a lot of people wonder if the commute's difficult, flying back and forth all the time, and I say that part's great. I mean, the one flight, I'm going home to see my family, so I love it. No, usually through Toronto.
You do have to, right?
Yeah. On the return flight, usually the Monday morning flight's a direct.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you do on the flight?
You know what? It depends on the circumstances. You know, generally it's a great time to get some reading done, and so that's sometimes.
And when you say reading, you don't mean like Michael Connolly.
No.
You mean like
reading
your briefings.
Yeah, reading briefings and things like that. So it can be a good time to do that. To work on the computer from time to time. There are times that it's a great time to get some rest too, because especially if I do get to go home in the evening on an evening flight. Usually we've been going 16-hour days when we're here in Ottawa. Obviously, when I'm away from my family, you know, we want to, and I think for a lot of the Western MPs, it's you really do focus on getting that work done when you're here. So you've had 4 16-hour days in a row, and when you get on that flight to go back home, sometimes there's a little bit of rest time that'll happen there too. And I'm one that actually doesn't mind having a conversation on the plane.
You
so
don't,
from time to time,
because a lot of people put on that kind of business look, so that you know when you sit down next to them that they have no interest in talking to you whatsoever. You're not one of those.
There are times that certainly you've had a certain type of week and it's been busy and you're maybe a little bit more tired. So there's certain times that you may not be. I think everybody has certain times that they may not be as enthusiastic about a conversation, but I do tend, for the most part, to like the conversations. And even when I find when I'm not enthusiastic about it, I sometimes can be engaged in it, right? Once you start having the conversation. So
who's the most interesting person or conversation? What's the most interesting conversation you've had on a plane?
On the plane?
Yeah.
I've had several. I would say Don Mazankowski, though.
Okay.
Probably. I had the opportunity to fly back with Don Mazankowski maybe a year or two ago, and what an engaging man.
Was that?
Just so likable. You know, a couple of times I kind of said to him, listen, I don't want to monopolize your time, because I was enjoying the conversation, hearing the stories, and he just said to me, listen, I love to tell the stories, like it was, you know, and so we talked virtually the whole flight back, 4 hours, and probably one of the most memorable flights I had.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's also, maybe that's what you're going to be like in 30, 40 years.
Yeah, who knows?
Flying beside a young MP and sharing all your war stories.
Yeah, it's a great place to be, and I never want to lose my appreciation for the place. It was a conversation that I had right when I first got elected with Peter MacKay, and said, you know, do you get tired of it? Of course, his father was an MP, so he's very familiar with the place, and he said no. He said, you know, every day there's something new here and amazing that you see that you haven't seen before, and I feel the same way after 4 years.
Do you feel like you're making a difference?
Oh, absolutely.
You do, eh?
Oh, yeah. I know there's some who say, well, you know, backbench MPs and things like that, it's difficult, and what kind of impact can you have? You know what? You're one of a community of 308 people. And, you know, if you work on those relationships, not just with your own party, but with members of other parties, and you build relationships and again, engage with people, certainly you can make a big difference. You know, we're in a caucus meeting every Wednesday morning with the Prime Minister for 2.5 hours, and you have the opportunity to stand up and say whatever it is that you're thinking, whatever it is that your constituents
are you really allowed to
say.
Do that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So as an MP, because a lot of people feel that, I mean, you were just saying backbench MP, but a lot of people feel that MPs really don't have much power, but you have the ability to stand up and make your views and your opinions and your constituents' needs heard. Oh,
there's no question. And you know, I think that if people decide they're not going to have the power, then they won't. If people decide they can't make a difference, they won't make a difference. And that doesn't just go for MPs. That goes for people in society as a whole. I think about a kid. His name's Josh Bartolotti. Hopefully, I pronounced his name right. But a kid with a sister with autism here in Ottawa, who has decided he's going to make a difference. He's a young teenager. Yeah. He's decided he's going to make a difference, and he really does. You know, and there's no shortage of people like that across the country. People that have just said, you know what, I'm going to make people aware of this. I'm going to do everything I can. And I mean, by the tens of thousands across this country, there's people that are working like that in their communities and making a difference. But if we say we can't, we won't.
Okay, real quick question.
Sure.
If you couldn't be an MP, what would you want to be? Anything else in the world?
Well, other than an NHL hockey player. My wife tells me that I have to give that up. So, what would I be? I would probably be the general manager of a hockey team. Okay. I'd probably do something like that.
So hockey all the way.
Hockey is it is a passion for me. Yeah. But you know what? I would I think because of my experience as an MP, I'd also use in whatever capacity I am. I'd try and use whatever platform I might have to further other things and talk about, obviously autism would be one of those things, right. but many things. I think my perspective might be a little different now than it was 4 years ago because of my experience here.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Yeah. It was a very pleasant opportunity to chat with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.